Okay, sorry about that delay. Yeah, I was feeling in a goofy fractally mood. So here we are. So yeah, it's a beautiful day where I'm living right now. You'd never know that the world was trying, or human civilization, I should say, was trying to come to a brief but unspectacular end. But hey, here we are. In any event, I figured I'd bring something that was very different this week. Not too different than my usual fare, but different in the sense that it's something to get us out of our heads a little bit. So it's this short story collection by a guy named Stanislaw Lem, who, for those who don't know, was I'm pretty sure he's dead. I think that's a safe bet. Was a Eastern European science fiction author. He's got actually a pretty good number of decent titles under his belt. Um, that I can't name off the top of my head without going onto a Wikipedia page right now, but I have a couple of them floating around. But this is one that I remember reading way back. It's kind of like a collection of fables or Aesop's, um, or Aesop's fables, depending on your perspective. Um, and generally revolving around a couple of scientist robots, because it's implied that the characters are in fact mechanical in nature. Um, just kind of doing, sort of fable type things. So what I'll probably do today is there's three short stories, and then it goes into the Seven Sallies of Trurl and Clapausius. Uh, and I'm probably going to do those first three short stories, which introduce us to Trurl and Clapausius. Clapausius, sorry. Um, but you've got such titles as the Seven Sallies. They sally forth, if you will. So, like, the first Sally is the Trap of Gargantius. The second Sally, the Offer of King Cruel, or K. Rule, haha. The third Sally, the Dragons of Probability. The fourth Sally, or How Trurl Built a Femme Fatalatron to Save Prince Pantagoon from the Pangs of Love, and how later he resorted to a cannonade of babies. That sort of thing. So they're lighthearted. The seventh Sally, or How Trurl's Own Perfection Led to No Good. So it's good stuff. They're Aesop's, they're fables, they're short stories in the purest sense, and they're cute. That's, I think, the best way to describe most of them. They're just kind of cute. Something comfortable for us to ease our minds and spirits, if you will, or condensed psionic electron matrix, depending on how what part of the galaxy you hail from, or timeline, as the case may be. And, just not worry so much about the world as it is. Think of the world how it could be, or maybe was, or maybe will be. Who knows? And without further ado, I get some fluid in me. And let's see if this program will do what I want it to do. So again, this collection of short stories is called the Cyberiad, Fables for the Cybernetic Age, and it's by Stanislaw Lem. How the World Was Saved by Stanislaw Lem. One day, Trurl the constructor put together a machine that could create anything starting with N. When it was ready, he tried it out, ordering it to make needles, then nankeens and negligees, which it did, then nail the lot to narghiles filled with nepenthe and numerous other narcotics. The machine carried out his instructions to the letter. Still not completely sure of its ability, he had it produce, one after the other, nimbuses, noodles, nuclei, neutrons, naphtha, noses, nymphs, naiads, and natrium. This last it could not do, and Trurl, considerably irritated, demanded an explanation. "Never heard of it," said the machine.
What? But it's only sodium. You know, the metal, the element.
Sodium starts with an S, and I only work in N.
But in Latin, it's natrium.
Look, old boy, said the machine, if I could do everything starting with N in every possible language, I'd be a machine that could do everything in the whole alphabet, since any item you care to mention undoubtedly starts with N in one foreign language or another. It's not that easy. I can't go beyond what you programmed. So, no sodium.
Very well,
Said Trurl, and ordered it to make night, which it made at once. Small, perhaps, but perfectly nocturnal. Only then did Trurl invite over his friend Clapausius the constructor, and introduced him to the machine, praising its extraordinary skill at such length that Clapausius grew annoyed, and inquired whether he too might not test the machine.
be my guest, said Trurl, but it has to start with N.
N, said Clapausius. All right, let it make nature. The machine whined, and in a trice Trurl's front yard was packed with naturalists. They argued, each publishing heavy volumes, which the others tore to pieces. In the distance one could see flaming pyres, on which martyrs to nature were sizzling. There was thunder, and strange mushroom-shaped columns of smoke rose up. Everyone talked at once, no one listened, and there were all sorts of memoranda, appeals, subpoenas, and other documents, while off to the side sat a few old men feverishly scribbling on scraps of paper.
Not bad, eh? Said Trurl with pride. Nature to a T. Admit it.
But Clapausius wasn't satisfied. What, that mob? Surely you're not going to tell me that's nature?
Then give the machine something else,
snapped Trurl. Whatever you like.
Whatever you like.
For a moment Clapausius was at a loss for what to ask, but after a little thought he declared that he would put two more tasks to the machine. If it could fulfill them, he would admit that it was all Trurl had said it was. Trurl agreed to this, whereupon Clapausius requested negative. Oh, geez, phone calls. Sorry about that. Wrong numbers are the best numbers. I should just turn off my phones, really. Trurl agreed to this, whereupon Clapausius requested negative.
Negative? Cried Trurl. What on earth is negative?
The opposite of positive, of course, Clapausius coolly replied. Negative attitudes, the negative of a picture, for example. Now don't try to pretend you never heard of negative. All right, machine, get to work. The machine, however, had already begun. First, it manufactured antiprotons, then anti-electrons, anti-neutrons, anti-neutrinos, and labored on until from out of all this antimatter an anti-world took shape. glowing like a ghostly cloud above their heads.
Hmm,
Muttered Clapausius, displeased.
that's supposed to be negative? Well, let's say it is for the sake of peace. But now here's the third command. Machine, do nothing.
The machine sat still. Clapausius rubbed his hands in triumph, but Trurl said,
Well, what did you expect? You asked it to do nothing, and it's doing nothing. Correction. I asked it to do nothing, but it's doing nothing. Nothing is nothing. Come, come. It was supposed to do nothing, but it hasn't done anything, and therefore I've won. For nothing, my dear and clever colleague, is not your run-of-the-mill nothing, the result of idleness and inactivity, but dynamic, aggressive nothingness. That is to say, perfect, unique, ubiquitous, in other words, non-existence, ultimate and supreme in its very own non-person.
You're confusing the machine,
cried Trurl, but suddenly its metallic voice rang out.
Really, how can you two bicker at a time like this? Oh, yes, I know what nothing is, and nothingness, non-existence, non-entity, negation, nullity, and nihility, since all these come under the heading of N as in nil. Look then upon your world for the last time, gentlemen. Soon it shall no longer be.
The constructors froze, forgetting their quarrel, for the machine was in actual fact doing nothing, and it did it in this fashion. One by one, various things were removed from the world, and the things thus removed ceased to exist, as if they had never been. The machine had already disposed of Nolars, Night Zebs, Nox Nex, Nally Rakers, Neotremes, and Non-Malriggers. And at moments, though, it seemed that instead of reducing, diminishing, and subtracting, the machine was increasing, enhancing, and adding, since it liquidated, in turn, nonconformists, nonentities, nonsense, non-support, nearsightedness, narrow-mindedness, naughtiness, neglect, nausea, necrophilia, and nepotism. But after a while, the world very definitely began to thin out around Trurl and Clapausius.
Oh my gosh, said Trurl. If only nothing bad comes out of all this.
Don't worry, said Clapausius. You can see it's not producing universal nothingness, but only causing the absence of whatever starts with N, which is really nothing in the way of nothing, and nothing is what your machine, dear Trurl, is worth. Do not be deceived, replied the machine. I've begun, it's true, with everything in N, but only out of familiarity. To create, however, is one thing, to destroy another thing entirely. I can blot out the world for the simple reason that I'm able to do anything and everything means everything. In N, and consequently nothingness, is child's play for me. In less than a minute now you will cease to have existence, along with everything else, so tell me now, Clapausius, and quickly, that I am really and truly everything I was programmed to be, before it is too late. But
Clapausius was about to protest, but noticed, just then, that a number of things were indeed disappearing, and not merely those that started with N. The constructors were no longer surrounded by the Grunchians, the Targalisks, the Shupops, the Kalinatafacts, the Thists, Warches, and Prytons.
stop! I take it all back! Desist! Whoa! Don't do nothing!
Screamed Clapausius. But before the machine could come to a full stop, all the Brashations, Plewsters, Larrys, and Zits had vanished away. Now the machine stood motionless. The world was a dreadful sight. The sky had particularly suffered. There were only a few isolated points of light in the heavens, no trace of the glorious Warches and Zits that had, till now, graced the horizon.
Great Gauss! cried Clapausius, sorry. And where are the Gruncheons? Where, my dear favourite Prytons? Where now the gentle Zits? They no longer are, nor ever will exist again, the machine said calmly. I executed, or rather only began to execute, your order. I tell you to do nothing, and you... Clapausius, don't pretend to be a greater idiot than you are, said the machine. Had I made nothing outright, in one fell swoop everything would have ceased to exist, and that includes Trurl, the sky, the universe, and you, and even myself. In which case, who could say, and to whom could it be said, that the order was carried out, and I am an efficient and capable machine? And if no one could say it to no one, in what way then could I, who also would not be vindicated? Yes, fine, let's drop the subject, said Clapausius. I have nothing more to ask of you, only please, dear machine, please return the zits, for without them life loses all its charm. But I can't. They're in Z, said the machine. Of course, I can restore nonsense, narrow-mindedness, nausea, necrophilia, neuralgia, nefariousness, and noxiousness. As for the other letters, however, I cannot help you. I want my zits, bellowed Clapausius. Sorry, no zits, said the machine. Take a good look at this world, how riddled it is with huge gaping holes, how full of nothingness, the nothingness that fills the bottomless void between the stars, how everything about us has become lined with it, how it darkly lurks behind each shred of matter. This is your work, envious one, and I hardly think the future generations will bless you for it. Perhaps they won't find out. Perhaps they won't notice, groaned the pale Clapausius, gazing up incredulously at the black emptiness of space, and not daring to look his colleague Trurl in the eye. Leaving him beside the machine that could do everything in N, Clapausius skulked home. And to this day the world has remained honeycombed with nothingness, exactly as it was when halted in the course of its liquidation. And as all subsequent attempts to build a machine on any other letter were met with failure, it is to be feared that never again will we have such marvelous phenomena as the Warches and the Zits. No, never again. And that was How the World Was Saved by Stanislaw Lem. Okay, that first one's actually pretty dark in its way. But also goofy and hilarious. All right. This next one is called Trurl's Machine. You'll notice a theme. It's usually like these two scientist engineers, constructors, build something. One of these two builds something and then kind of puts it to the test, and then the story goes and explores all the ways that it can go horribly, horribly awry. Which is just sort of the way of things, isn't it? Alrighty. Another sip of water here. It is going to be a shorter one, shorter session today, since I have a few other things going on afterwards. Trurl's Machine. Once upon a time, Trurl the constructor built an 8-story thinking machine. When it was finished, he gave it a coat of white paint, trimmed the edges in lavender, stepped back, squinted, then added a little curlicue on the front, and, where one might imagine the forehead to be, a few pale orange polka dots.
Extremely pleased with himself, he whistled an air and, as is always done on such occasions, asked it the ritual question of how much is 2 plus 2. The machine stirred. Its tubes began to glow, its coils warmed up, current coursed through all its circuits like a waterfall, transformers hummed and throbbed. There was a clanging and a chugging, and such an ungodly racket that Trurl began to think of adding a special mentation muffler. Meanwhile the machine labored on, as if it had been given the most difficult problem in the universe to solve. The ground shook. The sand slid underfoot from the vibration. Valves popped like champagne corks. The relays nearly gave way under the strain. At last, when Trurl had grown extremely impatient, the machine ground to a halt and said in a voice like thunder, "7!"
Nonsense, my dear, said Trurl. The answer's 4. Now be a good machine and adjust yourself. What's 2 and 2?
7! snapped the machine. Trurl sighed and put his coveralls back on, rolled up his sleeves, opened the bottom trapdoor, and crawled in. For the longest time he hammered away inside, tightened, soldered, ran clattering up and down the metal stairs, now on the 6th floor, now on the 8th, then pounded back down to the bottom and threw a switch, but something sizzled in the middle, and the spark plugs grew blue whiskers. After 2 hours of this he came out, covered with soot but satisfied, put all his tools away, took off his coveralls, wiped his face and his hands. As he was leaving, he turned and asked, just so there would be no doubt about it,
And now what's 2 and 2?
7! replied the machine. Trurl uttered a terrible oath, but there was no help for it. Again he had to poke around inside the machine, disconnecting, correcting, checking, resetting, and when he learned for the 3rd time that 2 and 2 were 7, he collapsed in despair at the foot of the machine, and sat there until Clapausius found him. Clapausius inquired what was wrong, for Trurl looked as if he had just returned from a funeral. Trurl explained the problem. Clapausius crawled into the machine himself a couple of times, tried to fix this and that, then asked it for the sum of 1 plus 2, which turned out to be 6. 1 plus 1, according to the machine, equaled 0. Clapausius scratched his head, cleared his throat, and said, "My friend, you'll just have to face it. That isn't the machine you wished to make. However, there's a good side to everything, including this."
What good side?
muttered Trurl, and kicked the base on which he was sitting. "Stop that," said the machine. It's sensitive, too. But where was I? Oh, yes. There's no question that we have here a stupid machine, and not merely stupid in the usual normal way, oh no. This is, as far as I can determine, and you know I am something of an expert, this is the stupidest thinking machine in the entire world, and that's nothing to sneeze at. To construct deliberately such a machine would be far from easy. In fact, I would say that no one could manage it. For the thing is not only stupid, but stubborn as a mule. That is, it has a personality common to idiots, for idiots are uncommonly stubborn.
What earthly use do I have for such a machine?
Said Trurl, and kicked it again. I'm warning you, you better stop, said the machine. A warning, if you please, observed Clapausius dryly. Not only is it sensitive, dense, and stubborn, but quick to take offense, and believe me, with such an abundance of qualities, there are all sorts of things you might do.
What, for example?
Asked Trurl. Well, it's hard to say offhand. You might put it on exhibit and charge admission. People would flock to see the stupidest thinking machine that ever was. What does it have? 8 stories? Really, could anyone imagine a bigger dunce? And the exhibition would not only cover your costs, but...
Enough! I'm not holding an exhibition,
Trurl said, stood up, and, unable to restrain himself, kicked the machine once more.
This is your third warning, said the machine.
What?
Cried Trurl, infuriated by its imperious manner.
You,
And he kicked it several times, shouting,
you're only good for kicking, you know that?
You have insulted me for the fourth, fifth, sixth, and eighth times, said the machine. Therefore I refuse to answer all further questions of a mathematical nature.
It refuses. Do you hear that?
Fumed Trurl, thoroughly exasperated.
After 6 comes 8. Did you notice, Clapausius? Not 7, but 8. And that's the kind of mathematics Her Highness refuses to perform. Take that, and that, and that. Or perhaps you'd like some more.
The machine shuddered, shook, and without another word started to lift itself from its foundations. They were very deep, and the girders began to bend, but at last it scrambled out, leaving behind broken concrete blocks with steel spokes protruding, and it bore down on Trurl and Clapausius like a moving fortress. Trurl was so dumbfounded that he didn't even try to hide from the machine, which, to all appearances, intended to crush him to a pulp. But Clapausius grabbed his arm and yanked him away, and the two of them took to their heels. When finally they looked back, they saw the machine swaying like a high tower, advancing slowly, at every step sinking to its second floor, but stubbornly, doggedly pulling itself out of the sand and heading straight for them.
Who ever heard of such a thing?
Trorl gasped in amazement.
Why, this is mutiny. What do we do now?
Wait and watch, replied the prudent Clapausius. We may learn something. But there was nothing to be learned just then. The machine had reached firmer ground and was picking up speed. Inside, it whistled, hissed, and sputtered.
Any minute now the signal box will knock loose, said Churl under his breath. That'll jam the program and stop it.
No, said Clapausius. This is a special case. The thing is so stupid that even if the whole transmission goes, it won't matter. But look out! The machine was gathering momentum, clearly bent on running them down, so they fled just as fast as they could, the fearful rhythm of crunching steps in their ears. They ran and ran. What else could they do? They tried to make it back to their native district, but the machine outflanked them, cut them off, forced them deeper and deeper into a wild, uninhabited region. Mountains, dismal and craggy, slowly rose out of the mist. Trurl, panting heavily, shouted to Clapausius.
Listen, let's turn into some narrow canyon where it won't be able to follow us. The cursed thing. What do you say?
No, better go straight, wheezed Clapausius. There's a town up ahead. Can't remember the name. Anyway, we can find shelter there. So they ran straight and soon saw houses before them. The streets were practically deserted at this time of day, and the constructors had gone a good distance without meeting a living soul, when suddenly an awful crash, like an avalanche at the edge of the town, indicated that the machine was coming after them. Churl looked back and groaned.
Good heavens! It's tearing down the houses, Clapausius.
For the machine, in stubborn pursuit, was plowing through the walls of the buildings like a mountain of steel, and in its wake lay piles of rubble and white clouds of plaster dust. There were dreadful screams, confusion in the streets, and Trurl and Clapausius, their hearts in their mouths, ran on till they came to a large town hall, darted inside, and raced down endless stairs into a deep cellar. It won't get us in here, even if it brings the whole building down on our heads, panted Clapausius. But really, the devil himself had me pay you a visit today. I was curious to see how your work was going. Well, I certainly found out.
Quiet, interrupted Trurl. Someone's coming.
And indeed, the cellar door opened up, and the mayor entered, accompanied by several aldermen. Trurl was too embarrassed to explain how this strange and calamitous situation had come about. Clapausius had to do it. The mayor listened in silence. Suddenly the walls trembled, the ground heaved, and the sound of cracking stone reached them in the cellar.
It's here?
Cried Churl.
Yes, said the mayor, and it demands that we give you up. Otherwise, it says it will level the entire town.
Just then they heard, far overhead, words that honked as if from a muffled horn.
Trolls here. I smell troll.
But, but surely you won't give us up?
Asked in a quavering voice the object of the machine's obstinate fury.
The one of you who calls himself Troll must leave. The other may remain, since surrendering him does not constitute part of the conditions.
Have mercy.
We are helpless, said the mayor, and were you to stay here, Troll, you would have to answer for all the damage done to this town and its inhabitants, since it was because of you that the machine destroyed 16 homes and buried beneath their ruins many of our finest citizens. Only the fact that you yourself stand in imminent peril permits me to let you leave unpunished. Go, then, and never more return.
Churl looked at the aldermen, and, seeing his sentence written on their stern faces, slowly turned and made for the door.
Wait, I'll go with you,
cried Clapausius impulsively.
You?
Said Churl, a faint hope in his voice.
But no, he added after a moment. Why should you have to perish too?
Nonsense,
rejoined Clapausius with great energy.
What, us perish at the hands of that iron imbecile? Never! It takes more than that, my friend, to wipe two of the most famous constructors off the face of the globe. Come, Trull, chin up.
Encouraged by these words, Churl ran up the stairs after Clapausius. There was not a soul outside in the square. Amid clouds of dust and the gaunt skeletons of demolished homes stood the machine, higher than the town hall tower itself, puffing steam, covered with the blood of powdered brick and smeared with chalk.
Careful, whispered Clapausius. It doesn't see us. Let's take that first street on the left, and then turn right, then straight for those mountains. There we can take refuge and think of how to make the thing give up once and for all its insane. Now! He yelled,
for the machine had just spotted them and was charging, making the pavement buckle. Breathless, they ran from the town and galloped along for a mile or so, hearing behind them the thunderous stride of the colossus that followed relentlessly.
I know that ravine, Clapausius suddenly cried. That's the bed of a dried-out stream, and it leads to cliffs and caves. Faster, faster, the thing'll have to stop soon.
So they raced uphill, stumbling and waving their arms to keep their balance. But the machine still gained on them. Scrambling up over the gravel of the dried-out riverbed, they reached a crevice in the perpendicular rock, and, seeing high above them the murky mouth of a cave, began to climb frantically toward it, no longer caring about the loose stones that flew from under their feet. The opening in the rock breathed chill and darkness. As quickly as they could, they leaped inside, ran a few extra steps, then stopped.
Well, here at least we're safe, said Churl, calm once again. I'll just take a look to see where it got stuck.
Be careful, cautioned Clapausius.
Churl inched his way to the edge of the cave, leaned out, and immediately jumped back in fright.
It's coming up the mountain,
he cried.
Don't worry, it'll never be able to get in here,
said Clapausius, not altogether convinced.
But what's that? Is it getting dark? Oh, no!
At that moment, a great shadow blotted out the bit of sky visible through the mouth of the cave, and in its place appeared a smooth steel wall with rows of rivets. It was the machine slowly closing with the rock, thereby sealing up the cave as if with a mighty metal lid.
We're trapped,
whispered Trurl, his voice breaking off when the darkness became absolute.
That was idiotic on our part, Clapausius exclaimed, furious, to jump into a cave that it could barricade. How could we have done such a thing?
What do you think it's waiting for now?
asked Trurl after a long pause.
For us to give up. That doesn't take any great brains.
Again, Again there was silence. Trurl tiptoed in the darkness, hands outstretched, in the direction of the opening, running his fingers along the stone until he touched the smooth steel, which was warm, as if heated from within.
I feel Trurl,
boomed the iron voice. Trurl hastily retreated, took a seat alongside his friend, and for some time they sat there, motionless. At last Clapausius whispered,
There's no sense in our just sitting here. I'll try to reason with it.
That's hopeless, said Trurl, but go ahead. Perhaps it will at least let you go free.
Now, none of that,
said Clapausius, patting him on the back. And he groped his way toward the mouth of the cave and called,
Hello out there, can you hear us? Yes,
said the machine.
Listen, we'd like to apologize. You see, well, there was a little misunderstanding, true, but it was nothing, really. Trurl had no intention of... I'll pulverize Trurl, said the machine. But first, he'll tell me how much 2 and 2 makes. Of course he will, and you'll be happy with his answer, and make it up with him for sure. Isn't that right, Trurl? Said the mediator soothingly.
Yes, of course,
mumbled Trurl.
Really? Said the machine. Then how much is 2 and 2?
That is 7,
said Trurl in an even lower voice.
Ha! Not 4, but 7, eh? Crowed the machine. There! I told you so!
7, yes, 7. We always knew it was 7, Clapausius eagerly agreed. Now will you, let us go? He added cautiously.
No. Let Trurl say how sorry he is, and tell me how much is 2 times 2.
And you'll let us go if I do?
asked Trurl.
I don't know. I'll think about it. I'm not making any deals. What's 2 times 2?
But you probably will let us go, won't you?
said Trurl, while Clapausius pulled on his arm and hissed in his ear.
The thing's an imbecile. Don't argue with it, for heaven's sake. I won't let you go if I don't want to, said the machine. You just tell me how much 2 times 2 is.
Suddenly Trurl fell into a rage.
I'll tell you all right, he screamed. 2 and 2 is 4, and 2 times 2 is 4. Even if you stand on your head, pound these mountains all to dust, drink the ocean dry, and swallow the sky. Do you hear? 2 and 2 is 4.
Trurl, what are you saying? Have you taken leave of your senses?
2 and 2 is 7. Nice machine. 7, 7! howled Clapausius, trying to drown out his friend.
No, it's 4. 4 and only 4. 4 from the beginning to the end of time. 4!
bellowed Trurl, growing hoarse. The rock beneath their feet was seized with a feverish tremor. The machine moved away from the cave, letting in a little pale light, and gave a piercing scream.
That's not true. It's 7. Say it's 7 or I'll hit you.
Never!
roared Trurl, as if he no longer cared what happened, and pebbles and dirt rained down on their heads, for the machine had begun to ram its 8-story hulk again and again into the wall of stone, hurling itself against the mountainside until huge boulders broke away and went tumbling down into the valley. Thunder and sulphurous fumes filled the cave, and sparks flew from the blows of steel on rock. Yet through all this pandemonium one could still make out, now and then, the ragged voice of Trurl bawling,
2 and 2 is 4! 2 and 2 is 4!
Clapausius attempted to shut his friend's mouth by force, but, violently thrown off, he gave up, sat, and covered his head with his arms. Not for a moment did the machine's mad efforts flag, and it seemed that any minute now the ceiling would collapse, crush its prisoners, and bury them forever. But when they had lost all hope, and the air was thick with acrid smoke and choking dust, there was suddenly a horrible scraping, and a sound like a slow explosion, louder than all the maniacal banging and battering, and the air whooshed, and the black wall that blocked the cave was whisked away, as if by a hurricane, and monstrous chunks of rock came crumbling down after it. Crushing down after it, sorry. The echoes of that avalanche still rumbled and reverberated in the valley below when the two friends peered out of their cave. They saw the machine. It lay smashed and flattened, nearly broken in half by an enormous boulder that had landed in the middle of its 8 floors. With the greatest care they picked their way down through the smoking rubble. In order to reach the riverbed, it was necessary to pass the remains of the machine, which resembled the wreck of some mighty vessel thrown up upon a beach. Without a word, the two stopped together in the shadow of its twisted hull. The machine still quivered slightly, and one could hear something turning, creaking feebly within.
Yes, this is the bad end you've come to, and 2 and 2 is, as it always was,
Began Trurl, but then the machine made a faint, barely audible croaking noise, and said, for the last time, 7. Then something snapped inside. A few stones dribbled down from overhead, and now, before them, lay nothing but a lifeless mass of scrap. The two constructors exchanged a look, and silently, without any further comment or conversation, walked back the way they came. And that was Trurl's Machine by Stanislaw Lem. Well, let's see. I'm going to get some water in me. That was longer. And there aren't really any breaks inside the stories themselves, but most of the stories are pretty short. They're only a couple pages typically. It should be noted that my edition of this book has little pictures in it. If I continue to do this particular title, I'll try and at least get scans of the pictures so I can post them up as background imagery. And they're all really cute, like done up sort of like woodcut drawings of machine people building ridiculous contraptions. All very entertaining stuff. But yeah, a bunch of cute little short stories. Okay. And the last one I'll be doing for today is called A Good Shellacking. A Good Shellacking by Stanislaw Lem. Someone was knocking at the door of Clapausius the constructor. He looked out and saw a pot-bellied machine on 4 short legs. "Who are you, and what do you want?" he asked. "I'm a machine to grant your every wish, and have been sent here by your good friend and colleague, Truel the Magnificent, as a gift." "A gift, eh?" replied Clapausius, whose feelings for Truel were mixed, to say the least. He was particularly irked by the phrase "Truel the Magnificent." But after a little thought, he said, "All right, you can come in." He had it stand in the corner by the grandfather clock while he returned to his work, a squat machine on 3 short legs, which was almost completed. He was just putting on the finishing touches. After a while, the machine, to grant your every wish, cleared its throat and said, "I'm still here."
"I haven't forgotten you," said Clapausius, not looking up.
After another while, the machine cleared its throat again and asked, "May I ask what you're making there?"
"Are you a machine to grant wishes or a machine to ask questions?"
said Clapausius, but added,
"I need some blue paint."
"I hope it's the right shade," said the machine, opening a door in its belly and pulling out a bucket of blue. Clapausius dipped his brush in it without a word and began to paint. In the next few hours he needed sandpaper, some carborundum, a brace and bit, white paint, and 1 No. 5 screw, all of which the machine handed over on the spot. That evening he covered his work with a sheet of canvas, had dinner, then pulled up a chair opposite the machine and said,
"Now we'll see what you can do. So you say you can grant every wish?"
"Most every wish," replied the machine modestly. "The paint, sandpaper, and No. 5 screw were satisfactory, I hope?"
"Quite, quite," said Clapausius. "But now I have in mind something a bit more difficult. If you can't do it, I'll return you to your master with my kind thanks and a professional opinion."
"All right. What is it?" asked the machine, fidgeting.
"A truel," said Clapausius. "I want a truel, the spit and image of Truel himself, so alike that no one could ever tell them apart."
The machine muttered and hummed and finally said, "Very well, I'll make you a truel, but please handle him with care. He is, after all, a truly magnificent constructor."
"Oh, but of course, you needn't worry about that," said Clapausius. "Well, where is it?"
"What, right away?" said the machine. "A truel isn't a No. 5 screw, you know. It'll take time." But it wasn't long at all before the door in the machine's belly opened and a truel climbed out. Clapausius looked it up and down and around, touched it, tapped it, but there wasn't any doubt. Here was a truel as much like the original truel as 2 peas in a pod. This truel squinted a little, unaccustomed to the light, but otherwise behaved in a perfectly normal fashion.
"Hello, truel,"
said Clapausius.
Hello, Clapausius. But wait, how did I get here?
Truel answered, clearly bewildered.
"Oh, you just dropped in. You know, I haven't seen you in ages. How do you like my place?"
Fine, fine. What do you have there under that canvas?
"Nothing much. Won't you take a seat?"
Well, I really ought to be going. It's getting dark.
"Don't rush off. You just got here," protested Clapausius. "And you haven't seen my cellar yet."
Your cellar?
"Yes, you should find it most interesting. This way."
And Clapausius put an arm around Truel and led him to the cellar, where he tripped him, pinned him down, and quickly tied him up, then took out a big crowbar and began to wallop the daylights out of him. Truel howled, called for help, cursed, begged for mercy, but Clapausius didn't stop, and the blows rang out and echoed in the dark and empty night.
Ouch! Ouch! Why are you beating me?
yelled Trurl, cowering.
It gives me pleasure, explained Clapausius, swinging back. You should try it sometime, Trull.
And he landed him one on the head, which boomed like a drum.
If you don't let me go at once, I'll tell the king, and he'll have you thrown in his deepest dungeon, screamed Trurl.
Oh, no, he won't. And do you know why?
Asked Clapausius, sitting down for a moment to catch his breath.
Tell me,
Said Trurl, glad of the reprieve.
Because you're not the real Trull. Trull, you see, built a machine to grant your every wish, and sent it here as a gift. To test it out, I had it make you. And now I'm going to knock off your head, put it at the foot of my bed, and use it for a bootjack.
you monster, why are you doing this to me?
I already told you. It gives me pleasure. But enough of this idle chatter.
And Clapausius got up, and this time picked up a huge bludgeon in both hands. But Trurl cried out,
Wait, stop, I have something to tell you.
I wonder what you could possibly tell me to keep me from using your head as a bootjack, replied Clapausius. Trurl quickly yelled,
I'm not any troll from a machine. The real troll. I only wanted to find out what you've been doing lately behind closed doors and drawn curtains. So I built a machine, hid in its belly, and had it take me here, pretending to be a gift.
Come now, that's an obvious fabrication, and not even clever, said Clapausius, hefting his bludgeon. Don't waste your breath. I can see right through you. You came out of a machine that grants wishes, and if it manufactures paint and sandpaper, a brace and bit, and a number 5 screw, it can surely manufacture you.
I had that all prepared beforehand in its belly, cried Trurl. It wasn't hard to anticipate what you'd need in your work. I swear I'm telling the truth.
Are you trying to tell me that my good friend and colleague, Trull the Magnificent, is nothing but a common sneak? No, that I will never believe, replied Clapausius. Take that! And he let him have it. That's for slandering my good friend Trull, and take that, and that.
and he let him have it again and again, clubbing and clobbering until his arm was too tired to club or clobber any more.
Now I'll have a little nap and rest up, said Clapausius, throwing aside the bludgeon. But don't you worry, I'll be back.
And he left, and soon was snoring so loud you could hear it even in the cellar. Trurl writhed and twisted until he loosened his bonds enough to slip off the knots, got up, crept back to the machine, climbed inside, and took off for home at a gallop. Clapausius, meanwhile, was watching the escape from his bedroom window, pressing a hand over his mouth to keep from laughing out loud. The next day he went to pay Trurl a visit. It was a gloomy and silent Trurl that let him in. The room was dark, but even so Clapausius could see that Trurl's person bore the marks of a good shellacking, though it was apparent that Trurl had gone to some trouble to touch up the scratches and hammer out the dents.
Why so gloomy? Asked a cheerful Clapausius. I came to thank you for the nice gift. What a shame, though, it ran off while I slept, and in such a hurry that it left the door open.
It seems to me, snapped Trurl, that you somewhat misused, or should I say abused, my gift. Oh, you needn't bother to explain. The machine told me everything. You had it make me, then lured me, I mean the copy of me, to the cellar, where you beat it unmercifully. And after this great insult to my person, after this act of the blackest ingratitude, you dare show your face here as if nothing happened. What do you have to say for yourself?
I don't really understand why you're so angry, said Clapausius. It's true I had the machine make a copy of you, and I must say it was absolutely perfect, like an amazing likeness. As far as the beating goes, well, your machine must have exaggerated a little. I did give the artificial Trull a poke or two, but only to see if it was well made, and perhaps also to test its reflexes, which were quite good, by the way. It turned out to be very much on its toes, and even tried to argue that it was really you. Can you imagine? Of course, I didn't believe it, but then it swore the gift wasn't a gift at all, but some sort of low and underhanded trick. Well, I had to defend the honor of my good friend, you understand, so I thrashed it some for slandering you so shamelessly. On the other hand, I found it to be extremely intelligent. So you see, Trull, it resembled you mentally as well as physically. You are indeed a great and magnificent constructor, which is precisely what I came to tell you so early in the morning.
Well, yes, in that case, said Truro, considerably appeased, though your use of the machine to grant your every wish was not, I would say, the most fortunate.
Oh, yes, one other thing I wanted to ask, said Clapausius, all innocence. What did you do with the artificial trull? Could I see it?
It was beside itself with rage, explained Truro. It said it would ambush you by that mountain pass near your house and tear you limb from limb. I tried to reason with it, but it called me names, ran out into the night, and started putting together all sorts of booby traps for you. And so, dear Clapausius, though you had insulted me, I remembered our old friendship, and decided to remove this threat to your life and limb. Hence, I had to disassemble it.
And he touched a few nuts and bolts on the floor with his shoe, and sighed. Whereupon they exchanged kind words, shook hands, and parted the best of friends. From that time on, Trurl did nothing but tell everyone how he had given Clapausius a machine to grant your every wish, how then Clapausius had insulted him by having it make an artificial Trurl, which he proceeded to beat black and blue, how this excellently constructed copy of the great constructor made clever lies to save itself, and finally managed to escape while Clapausius slept, and how Trurl himself, the real Trurl, eventually had to disassemble the artificial Trurl to protect his good friend and colleague from its vengeance. Trurl told this story so often and at such length, elaborating on his glorious achievement, and never failing to call on Clapausius as a witness, that it reached the ears of the royal court at last. And now no one spoke of Trurl other than with the utmost respect, though not long ago he had been commonly called the constructor of the world's stupidest computer. When Clapausius heard, one day, that the king himself had rewarded Trurl handsomely and decorated him with the Order of the Grand Parallax, he threw up his hands and cried,
What? Here I was able to see through his little game, and gave him so good a shellacking for it that he had to sneak home in the middle of the night and patch himself up, and even then he looked a sight. And for that they decorate him, praise him, shower him with riches. O tempora, O mores!
Furious, he went home, locked himself in, and drew the blinds. He too had been working on a machine to grant your every wish. Only Trurl had beaten him to it. And that was A Good Shellacking by Stanislaw Lem. So you see, of course.
Ah, come on.
I've really got to do something about that. Oh well. Normally I'm better about remembering to not have that on, or at least muted, but obviously not today. Whoops. All right. So yeah, that'll about do it for me today. Anyway, I would have liked to have do it longer, but I've got a bunch of other stuff I've got to do throughout the day that I've got to get prepped on. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. I do try to do this every week. The last couple weeks I wasn't able to due to massive scheduling conflicts. and my work getting really, really busy. Um, but hopefully, certainly for the immediate future, I'll be able to do these. I also have other streams throughout the week. Mecha Mondays, where I do something mecha adjacent or giant robot related. Um, and Warframe Wednesdays, where I do something Warframey for a couple hours. All right. Thanks for tuning in, and gosh, have a great day, a great weekend. I might ramp up my streaming schedule just to fill people's time, but we'll see. We'll see. All right. Thanks for tuning in again, folks. Have a great evening, afternoon, whatever.